Henry David Thoreau's 1854 book, Walden, is widely regarded as our nation's first treatise on America's development from an agrarian society to an industrialized nation. Almost a century later, the Osage Indian author John Joseph Mathews published Talking to the Moon, a Thoreau-like account of living in the tallgrass prairie of Osage County. Widely regarded as one of Oklahoma's most illustrious men of letters, John Joseph Mathews and the Osage Tribal Museum he founded have been honored as an Oklahoma literary landmark.
Once upon a time, there lived a writer named John Joseph Mathews, part Indian and part white. His home, a stone cabin surrounded by woods in the Osage Hills outside of Pawhuska. Oklahoma-born, his neighbors were curious but quiet.
He would get me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, "We're going out to see the prairie chickens dance."
30 years have gone by since Virginia Mathews said goodbye to her father, yet his stories live on.
I remember going when I had to go in summer, and he had an outdoor shower, and the outdoor shower was a pan with holes in it, so I could have a very nice little little bath out in the yard.
Virginia Mathews was one of many that came here to the Osage Hills to gather in this darkened auditorium to honor a life distinctly Oklahoman.
To actually go in and read his books, you're getting poetry, history, philosophy, biology, art. It's just an amazing, incredible blend of his creative output and his literary endeavors.
Karen Newer, co-chair of Oklahoma's Literary Landmarks, says honoring Mathews' work ensures his place as one of the region's most gifted writers.
Well, for me, having a love for literature and for books, for Oklahoma writers, to read his book, Talking to the Moon, in which the first chapter he describes the building of this cabin, and there's such a parallel to it and Thoreau's Walden, in which he describes the building of his cabin and the living with nature and living on the land and the importance of that to a person's soul and their whole being. To read that and then to go out and see it for yourself and to see what he was talking about. You see the rocks that he describes the building of and the placement.
Retracing the author's life always seems to lead back to his home, Blackjack's, named after the oak trees that dot the landscape. The past is as thick here as the dirt on the floors, but this is thankfully not how this place is remembered.
People came from Washington all the time to see them, because when he went for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, he became very well known by many congressmen, and they admired him very much and listened to what he said.
To say Blackjack's isn't what it used to be is an understatement of epic proportions. The fireplace where he used to sit isn't roaring anymore, but you can still make out the Latin phrase on the mantelpiece: to hunt, to bathe, to play, to laugh. That is to live.
You see the fireplace, and he was so concerned about the chimney being able to draw properly. You see where they drilled the water well, and he describes that in the book. And you see the mantle that he carved this inscription on, and it's all there.
Abandoned and alone, Blackjack sits and waits for a new generation to discover this 20th century writer, an Oklahoman whose writings are timeless, hence the move by educators to bring him back to life in the classroom.
I think as a writer, Mathews addresses an almost inferiority complex we in the Midwest have about our landscape. The landscape here is a lot more subtle in its beauty than, say, the mountains or the Everglades. And Mathews, as a writer, uniquely captures the beauty that is all around us here in the Midwest, in Oklahoma and southern Kansas. And he does it with such an articulate, timeless grace that it makes an ideal classroom piece of literature to study.
writings that have also been credited with paving the way for other Osage authors. Poet and scholar Carter Rivard says Matthew was a man of two worlds.
He could understand the language, and that's half the battle, because to follow what is being said within a language requires that you are almost completely acculturated to that language. It's almost impossible. It takes a Nabokov, and a very rare one, to use another language as a native language.
And maybe because of that, Mathews founded the Osage Tribal Museum in 1938. Museum director Catherine Redcorn says because of Mathews' efforts, this museum is in a category all its own.
We have his writing about the museum and how he come to decide we needed one. And, and we're so thankful that he did, because that made us have the oldest tribally owned museum in the United States.
So while Mathews' influence went beyond writing and his travels beyond Pawhuska, in the end, Mathews came full circle, returning home to the hills of the Osage Nation.